Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another Sunday morning to study Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada says that bhakti or devotion must be cultivated from a young age. And our today's speaker is an embodiment of this, who at a very young age of 16 got a Bhagavad Gita and his journey begins. I'm very honored to introduce and welcome on all your behalf His Grace Sutapa Prabhu. Sutapa Prabhu is a resident brahmachari at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. He's a disciple of His Holiness Kadambakanan Swami Maharaj. His main services are overseeing the School of Bhakti, which is a unique center of spiritual excellence. It organizes various spiritual courses, retreats, and numerous cultural events. He heads brahmachari training program, leads national outreach projects. He is a mentor and counselor for the community at large. He has designed and taught numerous courses on spirituality, lifestyle management, and has also authored many books which bring the ancient wisdom into the modern context. He has lectured at universities and corporate organizations and travels around the world to bring spirituality to the places which needs it the most. For over 20 years, Sutapa Prabhu has studied ancient Sanskrit text in depth, particularly the Bhagavad Gita, and shares the insights and worldviews that these texts offer. Originally from London suburbs, he was always attracted to the idea of simple living and high thinking. He was a talented cricket player growing up and was even selected for trials to play at county level. But destiny took him on a different course when at the young age of 16, he was given a Bhagavad Gita by a Hare Krishna monk. The search for spiritual bliss took hold of him and never let him go. After graduating from the University College London with a BSc in Information Management, he adopted full-time brahmachari life to further his knowledge, deepen his spirituality, and share these timeless principles with the wider society. 20 years later, he continues to do the same. His main motivation behind these achievements is to help people find Krishna, find themselves, and find their purpose in spirituality. Thank you, Sutapa Prabhu, for accepting our invitation to guide us on the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Mataji, just to ask a few questions. Number one, can I get a sharing rights if possible? So I can share my screen.
Yes.
And do you normally sing Radha Madhav, or you just go straight in for the class?
Yes, Prabhu, we do sing.
Oh, you do sing. Okay, sure. And what time should I finish by?
9 o'clock, Prabhu.
9 o'clock. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna, everyone. So really happy to be with you here. And yeah, I haven't made it to Leicester for a long time, so I'm happy at least to be on Zoom with all of you. And yeah, I hope we'll have a good time. Spiritually uplifting time this morning, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. Karuna Chaitanya Prabhu gave me 3 verses from the 11th chapter of the first canto. So we're reading today from text number 8, 9, and 10. And we'll kind of go into that, but we'll just sing Radha Madhav, very short, do an invocation, offer our respects to Srila Prabhupada, and then we'll begin from there. Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay, so thank you everyone again for coming. And so the way we'll do it is I'll give a little bit of an introduction and then we'll read the verses and the purports from the Bhagavatam, and then I'll give some maybe reflections, some illuminations on it. And then most likely I will leave probably about 20 minutes so we can have some discussion. Maybe there will be some questions or comments or realizations, and that will help us to enter more deeply into the Bhagavatam. So I do encourage you as you're listening, if you like to, you can put your camera on. If not, that's absolutely fine as well. But perhaps you can also, if you have any questions or you have any comments, or you have anything you would like to raised, then you can also put that in the chat function so that we can address those as time passes. Okay, so I'm going to share with you my screen. I hope you can all see my screen. And we're studying Bhagavatam. I'm just going to put this, I'm not doing an advert here. I'm not selling anything. But just if you'd like to, there is a free resource on the internet called Book Bhagavat. I've put the link in the chat, and you can download it if you so desire. It's a summary of the Bhagavatam, and maybe it will help you in your study of the Bhagavatam because it gives a very succinct overview of the flow of the Bhagavatam. And that can be very, very useful because the Bhagavatam in its complex is very, in its structure is very, very complex. And whenever we're reading any verses, it's nice to have the context. You know, Baladev Vidyabhusan, he says every verse of Shastra must be understood in the context of the chapter. Every chapter of the Shastra must be understood in the context of the entire book. And every book within the Vedic tradition should be understood within the context of the entire canon of the literature. Without context, sometimes we can read something, but we may not get the full, clear lesson from it. So today what I'm going to do with you is try and share some of that context before we read. And before we read the Bhagavatam, we're going to recite these beautiful prayers, which maybe you are familiar with. On the screen here is our preeminent founding teachers, one of them, Sanatan Goswami. And here is Sanatan Goswami worshipping his Istadev, Madan Mohan. And Sanatan Goswami, when he was young, he had a dream. He had a dream that a young Brahmin boy had come and gifted him the Bhagavatam. So in his dream, he received this gift and he was overwhelmed. He was over the moon, as they would say. But then he woke up. And as his dream broke and he woke up, he realized, oh no, it was only a dream. I didn't get the Bhagavatam. I'm so unfortunate. I thought I had gained the great treasure, but actually I haven't. And in his lamentation, his transcendental lamentation, it said that very day a Brahmin boy came to him and gave him the Bhagavatam. And from that very day, the Bhagavatam became his constant companion. And so in a very beautiful book called the Krishna Leela Stava, Krishna Leela Stava is a very beautiful book. It's a book written by Sanatan Goswami, which in poetry form summarizes the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which we know is the smiling face of Krishna. And in the Krishna Leela Stava, he recites these beautiful prayers. And this morning, I'll share this with you. If you have not already familiar with these prayers, and these are very beautiful prayers that you can recite before you open and read Srimad Bhagavatam to pray for the mercy of Bhagavatam and understand the great fortune that we have in studying this literature. Sarva Shastra Dipyusha Sarva Vedaika Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidvan Todita Aditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Pathaya Prema Vaichitya Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Manmahadhana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Asadu Saduta Dain Atinicho Chataraka Hanamuncha Kadachimam Premna Ritkanthayo Spura. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So yes, Srimad Bhagavatam is extremely complex. When you look at the dialogical structure of the Bhagavatam, then you will find that it is a series of nested conversations. It's pretty incredible. When you get to the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, you will find that what you are reading at one point is a conversation within a conversation, within a conversation, within a conversation, within a conversation, within another conversation. There are actually about 6 or 7 conversations going on at one point in the Bhagavatam, and therefore it's sometimes very easy to get lost. The Bhagavatam we are reading is the Bhagavatam which was discussed between Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya. And they are recalling the conversation between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit, which was on the bank of the Ganga. Sometimes Ganga is said, sometimes Yamuna, whichever it may be, at the place called Shukratal. And they are therefore recalling this conversation. As we know, Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. And then in the course of the conversation or the teachings of Sukadev to Parikshit, Sukadev is calling on many, many other conversations. And therefore, sometimes when you are reading the Bhagavatam, we can easily get lost. And so it's nice before we read any verse of the Bhagavatam to gain the context. So today I'm just going to share the context with you of the 11th chapter of the 1st canto, and that will help us to further appreciate the verses that we are going to recite today. So one way to understand or grasp the contents of an entire canto is by looking at the main sections within the canto. And so in Book Bhagavat, what we do is we look at the main sections within each canto of the Bhagavatam, and then we give you an acronym. An acronym is a series of letters. And if you remember these letters, you will remember certain keywords, and those keywords will allow you to remember every section of this canto. So the acronym for canto number 1 is SLAP, because only when we receive a slap, only when we receive a wake-up alarm clock from material nature, for most of us, do we begin to really question life? Do we begin to really search for Krishna? Do we really begin our spiritual journey with great earnestness? For most people, they will have to go through some difficulty in this world. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that 4 types of people come to Krishna: one who wants wealth, one who is inquisitive, one who is searching for knowledge. But Srila Prabhupada says practically everyone in Kali Yuga comes to Krishna because they're distressed. Someone, somewhere along the line, experiences the slaps of material nature, and that triggers them to then inquire about life. And in the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam, we're really hearing about how Parikshit received the slap. He received a wake-up call. Of course, Parikshit is an Antaranga Bhakta. He's Krishna's own associate. Yet he was put in that situation and to curse to die in 7 days. And that triggered his inquiries on the Bhagavatam. So it's very, very interesting. When you see the Bhagavatam, the structure of the Bhagavatam and the structure of the Bhagavad Gita basically mirror each other. If you look at the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam, it's like a preface to the entire Bhagavatam. It's setting the scene. And if you look at the 1st chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it's like a preface to the whole conversation. It's all setting the scene. If you look at the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam, then in the first few chapters, Sukadev summarizes the entire Bhagavat Siddhanta in a few chapters. He summarizes everything. And if you look at the 2nd chapter of the Gita, then what does that do? That summarizes the entire philosophy. In fact, the chapter is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Can you see the mirror? If you look at the Bhagavatam, after about 9 or 10,000 verses, right in the middle of the conversation, we begin the narrations of the 10th canto, Krishna's pastimes. And Jiva Goswami, he says that all of the contents of the Bhagavatam are ultimately simply there to illuminate one and give access to the pastimes of Krishna. So the essence of the Bhagavatam is right in the middle. When you look at the Gita, what do you find? That the essence of all the knowledge of the Gita is right in the middle. What is the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita called? The most confidential knowledge. And where do we find the Paribhasa Sutra, or the emperor verse of the Bhagavad Gita? In the 9th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. And how does the Bhagavatam end? The Bhagavatam ends with detachment. The teachings of Krishna to Uddhav in the 11th canto and the predictions of Kali Yuga in the 12th canto meant to engender a sense of detachment within the living entity. And how does the Bhagavad Gita end? Yes, with the teachings of Jnana Yoga, the final 6 chapters. The final chapter of Gita is called the perfection of renunciation. So essentially, the Shastra follows this thread. First, the Shastra teaches you how to live. Then the Shastra teaches you how to love. And ultimately, the Shastra teaches you how to let go. This is basically the theme. And so today we're discussing from the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam. And this is the basic structure of the 1st canto of the Bhagavatam. SLAP is the acronym, because without SLAP, the Bhagavatam can't begin. Without Parikshit being slapped, the Bhagavatam doesn't begin. So if you remember this word, you'll remember the 1st canto. S stands for Srimad Bhagavatam, because in the first 6 chapters of the 1st canto, we hear about the glory of the Bhagavatam. We hear about how the Bhagavatam came about. We hear about Narad Muni's instructions to Vyasadeva on how Bhagavatam should be compiled. We hear about the most important verses and conclusions of the Bhagavatam. And so the first 6 chapters are all about Srimad Bhagavatam. The next verses or chapters of the 1st canto are all to do with love of Godhead. Because why does Bhagavatam exist? To ultimately teach us love of God. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumartho Mahan. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything. And what is the goal of Bhagavatam? To teach you how to love Krishna. So therefore, in the next chapters of the Bhagavatam 1st canto, we find many examples of love. And that is what we will be talking about today. In the next chapters of the 1st canto, it's all about devotees who are attaining the absolute. Because when you have love, then what will happen? Krishna will always be on your mind. And what does Krishna say? Antikale chamameva smaran mukta kalevaram. If you leave this body thinking lovingly of me, then you will also come to my abode. You will also attain the absolute. So in these chapters of the Bhagavatam, we hear about all the personalities who are going back to the spiritual world, back to home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas retire, Kunti retires, Draupadi retires, even Krishna himself retires and goes back to the spiritual world. So everyone is leaving. And then in the final chapters of the 1st canto, P stands for Parikshit punished, because then we're hearing about the events leading up to Parikshit Maharaj being punished by or cursed by the Brahmin boy Shringi, and then we prepare for the second canto, where Parikshit then goes and inquires from Sukadev Goswami as to what is the duty of everyone in all situations, and ultimately what is the duty of someone who is about to die. Okay, so it's good to have this context. Today we are reading from Canto number 1. We're reading from chapter number 11, and we are reading texts 8 to 10. So remember, Canto 1 is a preface. Remember, 11th chapter is all about love. The love, we're going to hear about different examples of love, and this is the context. In these chapters of the Bhagavatam, from 7 to 11, we're hearing about all the devotees who have great love for Krishna. Arjuna has incredible love for Krishna. At the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, when Ashvatham released the Brahmastra at Arjuna, then what did Arjuna do? Naturally, he took shelter of Krishna. Because one who has love, one who is surrendered, Rakshishyati ti Vishvasho, he has the firm conviction that Krishna is my only protector. And therefore, in that danger, Arjuna lovingly took shelter of Krishna, knowing Krishna to be his only refuge. So we see the love of Arjuna. Not just that, we see the love of Uttara, because when Arjuna counteracted the Brahmastra, Krishna was about to leave to go to Dwarka, but then Ashvatham released another Brahmastra. And this time he directed it towards the womb of Uttara because he wanted to kill the final personalities within the dynasty, the personality who was in Uttara's womb. And then Uttara also, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogin, she approaches Krishna out of love. And Krishna enters into the womb of Uttara and protects her embryo. So we see the love of Uttara. Not just that, we see the love of Kunti. Isn't it? Kunti is just only wants to give her heart to Krishna. She says in a beautiful verse, Tvaime nanya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udvahatad adha gangevo gumadanvati. She says, Krishna, sneha pasham imam chindi, sever my ties of attachment to all the things and all the people of this world, so that my love will flow to you like the Ganga flows towards the ocean, not being impeded by anything. So she's saying, I just want my love, my mind, mano me ramatam tvai, I just want my mind to flow to you. This is the love of Kunti. And then we see the love of Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev was waiting to see Krishna. He didn't want to leave the world without seeing Krishna. This is perfection, to see Krishna. Some people think Bhishma Dev was waiting for Uttarayana. He was waiting for the sun to be in an auspicious position before leaving the world. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says he was not waiting for the sun to rise, Uttarayana. No. He was waiting for Krishna, who protected Uttara's womb. He was waiting for Krishna to appear. And then he was wanting to then leave. So we see the love of Bhishma Dev. And then Krishna at one point says, I will leave now. I will have to go to Dwarka. I am Dwarkadish. I have to leave. So then we see the love of the Hastinapur residents who experience great separation when Krishna leaves. And then we are also seeing the great love of the Dwarka residents who are receiving Krishna and seeing Krishna enter within their place. So this is the context of what we're reading today. We are reading, I'll go to the verse now, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. We are reading And I'm just going to share my screen so you can see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're reading from 3 verses today. We're reading from text numbers 8 to 10. So I will recite the Sanskrit myself, and then I'll read the translation. I'm just going to read 3 translations first. I'm going to say something, and then we're going to come back and look at the purports. Okay? So this is text number 8. Aho sanata bhavata smayadvayam trevishtapanam apidura darshanam prema smita snigdha nirikshananam pasyem rupam tava sarvasobhagam. So this is the Dwarka residents glorifying Krishna as he enters into Dwarka. Oh, it is our good luck that we have come again today under your protection by your presence. Although your lordship is rarely visited, even by the denizens of heaven, now it is possible for us to look upon your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form, full of all auspiciousness. Yadham yujaksham sparsarabho bhavan kurun madhun vata surididikshaya tatrabdakoti pratimakshano bhavet ravim vinakshno rivanastavachuta. O lotus-eyed Lord, whenever you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, or Hastinapur to meet your friends and relatives, every moment of your absence seems like millions of years. O infallible one, at that time, our eyes become useless, as if bereft of the sun. Katam vayam nata chiroshite tvai prashanna dristya kilata pashoshanam jive mate sundaraha sasobitam apashyamana vadanam manoharam iti chojitita vacha prajanam bhaktavatsala shrinvano nugraham dristya vitanvan pravisat puram. O Master, if you live abroad all the time, then we cannot look at your attractive face, whose satisfied smiles vanquish all our sufferings. How can we exist without your presence? Upon hearing their speeches, the Lord, who is very kind to the citizens and the devotees, entered the city of Dwarka and acknowledged all by their greetings, by casting his transcendental glance over them. So these are extremely, extremely beautiful verses. And what I want to share with you today is that if you look closely at these verses, then what they do is they teach us something very wonderful. There is a very beautiful flow in these verses. Krishna is entering Dwarka, and the first verse is talking about the great joy of seeing Krishna. Seeing Krishna is the greatest goal of life. It's the cherished desire of the devotee that somehow or other to come face to face with Krishna. If we can do that, then the goal of life is achieved. And so the Dwarka residents, as Krishna arrives, they are feeling the great fortune that now we are seeing Krishna. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. What does it mean to see Krishna? But in the next verse, the 9th verse, what the Dwarka residents are explaining is the separation they feel from Krishna when they can't see Krishna. And we're going to talk about this as well, this separation from Krishna, because this is a very, very, what shall we say, confidential teaching of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. And text number 10 is talking all about the smile of Krishna. What happens when Krishna smiles upon you? Why do we want to see Krishna smile? And why is Krishna's smile the ultimate benediction in the life of a devotee? So essentially, if you want to remember these three verses, they're all about seeing Krishna, they're all about separation from Krishna, and they're all about the smile of Krishna. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the verse, and we're going to read the purports. And remember the context. These verses are talking about, number one, seeing Krishna, but then number two, separation from Krishna, and number three, the smile of Krishna. And you'll see how these three things are actually incredibly interconnected. So purport, seeing Krishna. The Lord in his eternal personal form can be seen only by the pure devotees. The Lord is never impersonal. He is the supreme absolute personality of Godhead. Possible by dint, he is the supreme absolute personality of Godhead, possible by dint of devotional service to be visited face to face, which is impossible to be done even by the denizens of the higher planets. When Brahmaji and other demigods want to consult Lord Vishnu, the plenary portion of Lord Krishna, they have to wait on the shore of the ocean of milk, where Lord Vishnu is lying on the white island Svetadvip. This ocean of milk and the Svetadvip planet are the replica of Vaikuntha Loka within the universe. Neither Brahmaji nor the demigods like Indra can enter into this island of Svetadvip, but they can stand on the shore of the ocean of milk and transmit their message to Lord Vishnu, known as Shirodakshai Vishnu. Therefore, the Lord is rarely seen by them. But the inhabitants of Dwaraka, because of their being pure devotees without any tinge of material contamination of fruitive activities and empiric philosophical speculation, can see him face to face by the grace of the Lord. This is the original state of the living entities and can be attained by reviving our natural and constitutional state of life, which is discovered by devotional service only. So here, Srila Prabhupada is very, very powerfully explaining that the goal of the Krishna consciousness movement and the perfection of pure devotion is the ability to see Krishna face to face. Once someone came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he said, he was in Braj, I think he was in Vrindavan, and he came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and he said, Swamiji, while sitting on the banks of the Yamuna, while sitting on the banks of the riverside yesterday, I saw Krishna. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur looked at him and said, did you also see Maya? Did you also see Maya? Do you also sometimes see Maya? He said, yes, sometimes also Maya appears in my vision. So he said, then you have not seen Krishna. Krishna Surya Sama Hoya Maya Andhakar Yaha Krishna Taha Nahi Mayar Adikar. Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is just like darkness. Yaha Krishna, where there is Krishna, Yaha Nahi Mayar Adikar, there Maya has no opportunity to stay. If one is actually seeing Krishna, then they will not see Maya. They will not be attracted by Maya. They will not be disturbed by Maya. Of course, a devotee is alert and cautious, Maya cautious, but ultimately Krishna conscious. And by being Krishna conscious, the effects or the influence of Maya is negated. And so in this statement of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we get a clue that only when we have turned away from Maya, right now, the conditioned soul is in the other situation. Krishna bahir mukha hoya bhoga vancha kore. They've turned away from Krishna and they're trying to enjoy. But the moment that the living entity switches to the other side, switches to Krishna, turns to Krishna, sees Krishna or sees Krishna's service, then when one engages in that way, then they become qualified to see Krishna. Basically, right now, there are two things which are blocking us from seeing Krishna: anarthas and upadhis. These are the two things. These are the two things that are blocking the living entity from seeing Krishna. Anarthas, unwanted things, unwanted qualities, unwanted desires within the heart, and upadhis, designations, attachments, false labels, a false sense of who we really are, misidentification. These are the two things which are blocking us. And therefore, in this purport, if you look closely, what Srila Prabhupada is saying is that devotional service is the means to see Krishna. Why? Because devotional service eradicates anarthas and devotional service eradicates upadhis. This is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. In one verse is mentioned, Anartho pashamam shakshad bhakti yoga madhoksaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre sattvat samhitam. The living entity has many, many anarthas. Anartho pashamam shakshad, but those anarthas are not them. Those anarthas are artificial. They've come in over time in the material world. Bhakti yoga madhoksaje. But when you do bhakti yoga to adhoksaje, Krishna, then you become free of all these anarthas. Lokasya ajanato vidvams. But the most of the world, they don't know this. Chakre sattvata samhitam. Therefore, Vyasadeva compiled the Bhagavatam so that living entities can understand. If I practice bhakti yoga, then I will overcome all of my anarthas. So anarthas are blocking us from Krishna. But the good news is that bhakti yoga annihilates your anarthas. The other thing that's blocking us from Krishna is our upadhis. Therefore, what does Rupa Goswami say? Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. That what you do is, yes, you have many upadhis, but you engage your senses in serving the master of the senses, Krishna. And when you engage your senses in serving the master of the senses, then the senses become free. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam. You become free from all the upadhis, from all the false designations, from all the misidentifications, from all the attachments. They gradually become severed by the practice of bhakti. So bhakti annihilates your anarthas, bhakti annihilates your upadhis, and when your anarthas and upadhis are annihilated, then premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena, then you can begin to see with eyes of love, because the lust has been turned into love. And when you see with the eyes of love, then with those eyes which are salved with the ointment of love, then you will be able to see Krishna. And so this is the first thing that is being taught to us in these verses, that just as the Dwarka residents were seeing Krishna, their qualification was they had purity. There's no other qualification for seeing Krishna, only that one has purity in their consciousness. But in order to get purity, Tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Krishna says you have to engage in bhakti, but not just bhakti, tivra bhakti, intense devotional service, focused devotional service which is regular, devotional service which is constantly going deeper in commitment, devotional service in which there is a greater engagement and investment of the mind in the object of the service, devotional service in which one is ready to take more responsibility, devotional service in which one is ready to embrace difficulty, a type of devotional service which becomes so intense that in the fire of that devotion, all the upadhis and all the anarthas are completely annihilated. So if you want to see Krishna, this is the qualification. You have to become a pure devotee. And to become a pure devotee means you have to get rid of anarthas and upadhis. And to get rid of anarthas and upadhis, you have to engage in bhakti yoga. But it's not just any practice of bhakti yoga, it's intense, tivra bhakti. This will qualify one to see Krishna. So this is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the 8th verse. Now in the 9th verse, the verse is all about the Dwarka residents explaining to Krishna that when we don't see you, when you're away in Vrindavan, when you're away in Hastinapur, then the separation we feel, it feels like millions of years, isn't it? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says similar. Yugayitam nimeshena chakshusha pravrashayitam Shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me. This govinda viraha, this separation from Krishna, when I feel it, shunyayitam jagat sarvam, the whole world feels vacant, and I experience one moment to be like 12 years or more. And in the purport, because of time, I won't read the whole purport, but you can read. Krishna, Srila Prabhupada basically explains that one's senses are useless. One's senses are useless if they're not connected with Krishna. Just like one's eyes, if there is no sun, then the eyes become useless. So the Dwarka residents, our existence is useless unless you are seeing, we see you. And therefore, in this 9th verse, something amazing that's being shared with us is the mood of separation. Remember, the first verse was about seeing Krishna. But now the amazing thing in Gaudiya theology is that the way we see Krishna is by intensely feeling a separation from Krishna within our hearts. In this verse of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about the separation that the pure devotees feel for Krishna. But the amazing teaching of our acharyas is just as the pure devotees feel separation from Krishna, the practicing devotees also should endeavor a feeling of separation in their practice of spiritual life. And through that separation, that feeling of, I want to see Krishna, but Krishna is so far, Krishna is in the distance, I have not attained Krishna, but I really want to see Krishna, just like George Harrison sings, isn't it? I really want to see you, but it takes so long. That mood of separation, Srila Prabhupada very much appreciated. If we really want to see Krishna, then we have to imbibe a mood of separation from Krishna. Because when we feel separation from Krishna, in that separation, we actually meet Krishna in a very special way. The word for separation in Sanskrit, one word is vipralamba, isn't it? Vipralamba. One etymological meaning of the word vipralamba is to attain that which is at a distance. So Vipralamba on one hand means separation, but on another hand, it means to attain something which is very, very far away. In that separation, we actually come face to face with Krishna. What is the word viraha? Viraha is another word for separation. And what do our acharyas say? Another meaning of viraha, V comes from the Sanskrit word vishesha, which means special. And raha comes from the Sanskrit word rahasya unmilam, which means a confidential type of meeting. So on one hand, viraha means separation. But on another hand, what does viraha mean? A very special type of confidential meeting. So therefore, one of the main teachings of our Gaudiya acharyas is that if we want to see Krishna, we have to feel a separation from Krishna. The Goswamis, they were going around Govardhan and they were singing, Hey Radhe Vraja Devi ke chalalite, Hey Nanda Suno Kutha. Oh Krishna, or Radharani, where are you? Are you at the foothills of Govardhan? Are you on the banks of the Yamuna? Are you in the groves of the Kunjas of Vrindavan? Where are you? Where are you? We want to see you. We want to see you. So like this, one has to learn to cry for Krishna. If one does not learn to cry for Krishna, then one will not be able to ever see Krishna. You see, first this desperation must come. Just like the first chapter of the Gita is known as Arjun Vishad Yoga. And it literally means the yoga of dejection, the yoga of desperation. Because in the first chapter of the Gita, Arjun became so desperate. He was completely confused, isn't it? Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prachamitvam dharma shamuda cheta. That Krishna, I'm completely confused about my duty. I have no sense. I need your help. I need you. I need you. Only when that desperation comes about, that sense of separation, that sense of really wanting to meet Krishna, only when we learn how to cry for Krishna, then only are we able to meet Krishna. Therefore, one of our teachers, he said, we are not opening temples. No. Granby Street is not a temple. We are not opening temples. We are opening crying houses where people can learn to come to learn the art of how to cry for Krishna. Because unless that crying for Krishna, and this is not just tears of the eyes, it's the Atma Krandan, the cry of the soul, the desperation of the soul to want to meet Krishna. Only if that comes about will one be able to see Krishna. And so in the 9th verse, we're hearing all about separation from Krishna and how that feels. Then in the final verse, the 10th verse, we're hearing all about the smile of Krishna. And the denizens are praying that when we can't see your attractive face, when we can't see your smile, then we can't exist. But the moment, Krishna, you smile on us, then all of our sufferings are vanquished. All of our distress disappears. And this is the goal of life. I want to share a beautiful verse with you. And this may be a verse you may want to learn. It's a very, very beautiful verse of the Bhagavatam. Hasam hare ravanata kilalo katibra sokhashru sagara vishoshanam atyudaram sammohanaya rachitam nijamaya yasya bhrumandalam munikrite makaradvajasya. This is appearing in the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam. A yogi should similarly meditate on the most benevolent smile of Lord Hari, a smile which, for all those who bow to him, dries away the ocean of tears caused by intense grief. The yogi should also meditate on the Lord's arched eyebrows, which are manifested by his internal potency in order to charm the sex god for the good of the sages. This is a very beautiful prayer to remember when you go in front of Krishna. And when you go in front of Krishna, when you go in front of Radha Madhav and you see Krishna's smiling face, then you meditate on that smile of Krishna, and you realize that for those who meditate on this smile of Krishna, all the tears, all the ocean of tears, Madhvacharya, he says that if you combine all the tears that the conditioned soul has shed in many, many lifetimes of material existence, then those tears will be enough to fill an entire ocean. That's how many tears we've shed in this world. But the moment you meditate on the smile of Krishna, the moment you meditate on the eternal reality of Goloka Vrindavan, where every step is a dance, every word is a song, every act is an act of love, all water is nectar, all acts are driven by selflessness, all trees fulfill all the desires, and then you realize there's nothing to worry about, there's nothing to fear. And so this is what I wanted to share with you today, that in these 3 verses, we're learning about seeing Krishna. Remember, we can only see Krishna if we engage in powerful devotional service. So here's a quote. It is said in the Brahma Samhita that devotees being elevated in love of God always see Shyam Sundar, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within their hearts. But when they are mature, the same God is visible before them face to face. So in the beginning, we may meditate on Krishna. When we become more accomplished, we may see Krishna in the heart. But when we develop pure love, eyes, vision, salved with the ointment of love, then we will see Krishna face to face. This is the promise of Srila Prabhupada. So we want to engage in that powerful devotion. Then we learn about separation from Krishna. Actually, meeting Krishna is possible through the attitude of separation taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When the feelings of separation becomes very intense, one attains the stage of meeting Krishna. So our sampradaya is a sampradaya of separation. It's a transcendental crying. They say if you come across a theology where the devotee cries for God, then you can understand it's very advanced. But if you come across a theology where God also cries for the devotee, then you can understand it's even more advanced. But if you come across a theology where God becomes a devotee so that he can cry for himself, then you can understand this theology is the ultimate revelation. And this is the Gaudiya theology, that the devotee cries for God, God cries for his devotee, and in order to experience this crying, God even becomes a devotee to cry for himself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Japite japite mantra, korite pagal. I'm chanting and I'm becoming completely mad, crying and falling. And this is Gaudiya theology. And when we have this intense separation, then eventually we will see the smile of Krishna. Krishna will appear. Yes, Krishna sometimes disappears, appears, but when he appears and we see Krishna's smiling face, then remember that smiling face dries up an ocean of tears that have been shed. And Srila Prabhupada says beautifully in a lecture, when a devotee with all of his heart and soul serves Krishna, Krishna smiles. If you can get Krishna to smile upon you just once, your life's goal is fulfilled. So this is what we are talking about today. We're studying the 11th chapter of the first canto, all about the love that the Dwarka residents have for Krishna. In the 11th chapter, in the 8th verse, they glorify the beauty and the wonder of seeing Krishna. In the 9th verse, they explain when we don't see Krishna, we experience the separation of Krishna. And now in the 10th verse, they then explain the wonderful effect of seeing the smile of Krishna. So the lesson for us today is we want to see Krishna, but in order to see Krishna, we have to engender the separation from Krishna and do our bhakti in that mood of separation. And when we do bhakti in the mood of separation, then eventually Krishna does appear in our life. And when he smiles, if he smiles just once, Prabhupada says, your entire life goal is completely fulfilled. And that is, in a nutshell, some of the main teachings of these 3 verses from the Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have, I guess, like 13 minutes or 15 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, then I can try to shed some light. Well, Pradyumna Prabhu is here, so you have appeared. We wanted to see you. We're feeling the separation from you. Now we're seeing you smile. So our life's goal is fulfilled.
Well, my life's goal is fulfilled because I've received your rare association today, for which I'm very grateful. So thank you so much for giving your time this morning, for being with us. I very much love and appreciate the way you have made these verses very personal and accessible to our own devotional life. In fact, you do that with all of your teachings, and so very, very grateful for the way you present and teach and write to support our devotional practices. So remain ever grateful for that amazing service that you always perform. In terms of a question, we were kind of, well, first of all, let me just add this point that also in your presentation, you've kind of very deeply stirred an attraction to go and have darshan, or rather Madhavan, to be very attentive in that darshan. But one of the, a famous saying by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which we were kind of raised on, was, don't try to see Krishna, but act in a way that Krishna wants to see you. So how would we balance that out with? Yeah, we find this a lot. You see it also in the English language. Like, say, for example, if I say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Agreed? But then we can also say, out of sight, out of mind. Both statements are true, but they seem to be contradictory, but both statements are true. Or if I, for example, say to you, actions speak louder than words. That's true. But then I could also say the pen is mightier than the sword. Which one is true? Make up your mind. Well, they're both true, but they say different things. They're completely opposite, but they're still true. I could say to you, too many cooks spoil the broth. Agreed? You may have experienced some cooking for the Sunday feast. But we could also say, many hands make light work.
Which one is true? Well, both of them, but they're opposite. So what we find is this is why in a study of Shastra, something extremely important is something called hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the way in which you interpret and understand any given statement. And any given statement, that's why sometimes people have wars about what Prabhupada say. You know, everyone pulls out their Prabhupada astras like, Prabhupada said this, no, Prabhupada said this, and Prabhupada said this. And it can become a conflict because we're not able to resolve how different things all are important. In Sanskrit hermeneutics, this is known as samanvaya, the ability to harmonize different statements. So on one hand, our acharyas say, don't try and see Krishna, but act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you. And in another way, Prabhupada, if you do a search on Vedabase, Hey Radhe Vajadevike, he says the devotee is always thinking, where is Krishna? Where? I want to see Krishna. When will I meet Krishna? So how do we harmonize it? When Prabhupada is talking about, this is my understanding, and I stand to be edified by your understanding as well. But my understanding is that, yes, we should desire to see Krishna. Tatra lolyam apimulyam ekalam. The only qualification to see Krishna is the intense greed to want to see Krishna. But when we say, don't try and see Krishna, act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you, what we're stressing in that statement is don't demand or don't try to kick the door open. Have a desire to see Krishna, but don't do the work on your part. Focus on what you can do, and then Krishna will ultimately appear before you. So in one, it's about the aspiration, and in the other one, it's about the sadhana. And both are important. The aspiration is we want to see Krishna, but the sadhana is focus on what you can do. And in that way, both statements are harmonized and both statements work together. We want to see Krishna, but at the same time, first deserve, then desire. And then we're working on our bit. And I think, therefore, in that way, you can. Another devotee once harmonized this statement by saying, there's a difference if one says, I want to see Krishna, and there's a difference when one says, I want to see Krishna now. So if someone says, I want to see Krishna now, then that's like Bhaktisiddhanta is going to reply to them and say, don't try and see Krishna, but act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you. But if someone says, I want to see Krishna, I want to see Krishna, but okay, I'm gonna serve now, then that's absolutely fine. My understanding.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you so much. I think initially when we first heard it, it was used to just get us out the door, really. But as the years went on,
later.
Yes, the years went on, you know, the realization that the understanding of working on ourselves became more pronounced. So yeah, thank you for your balancing out of that as well. Thank you. I think there's some questions, quite a few in the chat.
Okay. Should I take those first, or should I take a live questions?
You can take the questions on the chat, Prabhu.
On the chat? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just open it. Give me a second. Okay, so Santosh Prabhu is asking, is there a difference in Sthayi Bhav of the moods of separation of various devotees, e.g. between Pandavas, Dwarkavasis, and Gopis? Yes, so just to give some context for all the devotees on the call, Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu talks about rasa. He explains that rasa is the ultimate aspiration of the living entity to experience bhakti rasa, the taste of love. And he explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that rasa is made up of 5 components. One is Sthayi Bhav, another one is Vibhav, another one is Anubhav, another one is Vyabhicharini Bhav, and another one is, I think I mentioned 5, right? Yeah. So, Sthayi Bhav means your permanent relationship. So, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami explains there are 5 main Sthayi Bhavs. There's Shanta, neutrality, Dasya, servitude, Sakya, friendship, Vatsalya, parental, and Madhurya, conjugal. So the question here, is there a difference in Sthayi Bhav of the mood of separation? So I'm not quite sure what you mean by Sthayi Bhav of the mood. But what I'm basically understanding from your question is that there are different devotees who have different relationships with Krishna, and do they experience separation in different ways? Yes, they do. For example, the Gopis experience separation during the daytime when Krishna is out with the Gopis. But then the Gopis have union with Krishna in the nighttime when the Gopis don't see them, and like that. So they all experience unique types of separation, unique situations which create a separation, and they also express their separation in different ways. For example, some of the Gopis are of the right-wing attitude, and some Gopis are of the left-wing attitude, and how they relate to Krishna in rasa is different. And so, yes, basically separation has unlimited varieties and forms in which it manifests in the spiritual world. But it's all spiritual separation. So all of that separation, remember, viraha brings a special type of confidential meeting. Okay, I'm going down. I'm just going to focus on because we've got less time, I'm just going to focus on the questions which directly relate to the main topic of the class. So, how many devotees living at present have seen Krishna? Well, I couldn't tell you because one, I haven't met all the devotees living at present, and number 2, I'm not privy to what they're seeing. So I couldn't give you a definitive answer on that. How do they see? That we answered, you see through the eyes of love. Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. And how do you get the eyes of love? By eradicating all your anarthas and upadhis. And how do you do that? By engaging in Divrena Bhakti. So that's how you see Krishna. And do they see Krishna in their dreams or face to face in front of them? Both. Krishna can appear anywhere. Prabhupada said, all day we are working for Krishna. And then at night time, we read the Krishna book. And then we go to bed and we dream about Krishna. So Krishna is unlimited. Krishna can appear in our dreams. Krishna can appear face to face. Both. And if one sees Krishna, should they keep it confidential? Yes, a devotee is by nature humble, and a devotee never wants to draw attention to themselves. A devotee is very afraid of becoming proud. And therefore, a devotee, if they have any kind of spiritual accomplishment, generally they do not advertise it or share it widely, although they may have some confidential devotees that they share it with to express their appreciation. Now, there is another sense in which a devotee may reveal certain amazing things that Krishna has done or amazing ways in which Krishna has appeared. They do it for the purpose of service. One of our acharyas, he says, what can I do? I have to tell you this, because if I didn't tell you this, I would not be doing justice to how Krishna has appeared in my life and how that can inspire you. So sometimes what we may do is reveal such things in public for the purpose of giving other people faith, for the purpose of giving other people inspiration, and for the purpose of giving people hope. But one must be careful, because even if you do it for that purpose, the nature is that you will draw attention. Isn't it? When Madhavendra Puri found out that Gopinath had stole a pot of sweet rice, and someone had come and said, "Where is Madhavendra? Gopinath has stolen a pot of sweet rice for you." What was Madhavendra Puri's first reaction? "Oh my God, I've seen Krishna. Krishna has done this for me." No, his first reaction was, "Let me flee this place, because when everyone hears about this, they will glorify me, they will honor me, they will respect me, and that may divert me from my own focused devotional service." So a devotee is very, very careful about revealing such things. And I'm going to end on this question because we're running out of time. How do we practically embed the mood of separation, crying for the Lord? How do we avoid it from being sentimental? Amazing question. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm just going to share my screen with you. I just want to write something on the screen. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, so the question is, how do we imbibe a mood of separation? Very beautiful question. If you allow me a few minutes, because I feel to make this class round, it's important to address this final question, which is a very, very good question. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami explains there are 4 types of separation. One type of separation is known as, oh my goodness, my pen is not working. Give me 1 second. Let me see if this pen will work. Okay, not working. Okay. I'll just have to say it. Okay, I'll just have to tell you, and maybe you can explore this in your own time. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami explains there are 4 types of separation. One type of separation is known as Purva Rag. I'm putting the notes on the chat. Another type of separation is known as Man. Another type of separation is known as Prema Vaichitya. And another type of separation is known as Pravas. Okay, so it's important to know these are the 4 main types of separation. Purva Rag means a type of separation which you are feeling in anticipation of meeting the Lord. So you're thinking, in the future I will meet the Lord, but you haven't quite met the Lord, and therefore you're feeling an anticipation, and in that anticipation there's a separation. Okay? Man means a type of separation based on transcendental anger. For example, sometimes Srimati Radharani has a complaint about Krishna, argues with Krishna, and feels a transcendental type of pride. And then even though Radharani and Krishna are together, because of the man, it's almost as though they're separated. A perverted reflection is, for example, husband and wife living in the house, have an argument, they're living together, but it's almost like they're in different worlds because the anger has created a distance. So in the spiritual world, this original form is known as Man. Another type of separation is known as Prema Vaichitya. This is a type of separation that's felt in presence. So 2 people are together, but the thought that in the future they will be separated creates a separation even while they're together. This is known as Prema Vaichitya. And Pravas means after a meeting, when the 2 parties are separated by distance, then this creates a separation. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that for the sadhaka, only one type of separation they can feel. Can you guess which of the one type of separation of the four above ones is the one that can be experienced by a sadhaka, someone who's in this world, someone who's practicing devotional service?
Is it Prema Vaichitya?
No, Prema Vaichitya, because for Prema Vaichitya, you have to be in the presence. But we're not in the presence of Krishna. Purva Rag, yes, Karuna Chaitanya Prabhu. The type of separation we are supposed to feel, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, is a separation in anticipation of meeting the Lord. And he says, how can you develop that anticipation for meeting the Lord? By hearing Hari Katha, by hearing about Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes. And the example is Rukmini, isn't it? She was the daughter of the king of Vidarbha, and practically every day sages would visit. And when sages would visit, they would speak all about the glories of Krishna, and Rukmini was hearing. And therefore she developed the great anticipation. I want to meet Krishna, I want to meet Krishna. And then what did she do? She sent a love letter, the original love letter. She sent to Krishna with a Brahmin messenger, and then Krishna came and kidnapped her. So the type of separation we're supposed to feel is Purva Rag. And now I'm going to end on your final bit, which is extremely important. How do we ensure that our crying for Krishna doesn't become sentimental? Because otherwise it can become like the cry of a sahajya. So the key is to study the Sad Goswami Astakam. Because in the Sad Goswami Astakam, we're hearing about how the Goswamis were crying for Krishna. But what were the Goswamis also doing as well as crying for Krishna? Nana Shastra Vicharane Punipuno Sadharma Sanstapako. The first thing that the Goswamis were doing is that they were cultivating spiritual knowledge. Not just that, Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manya Sharanya Karo. They were engaging in service to benefit all the living entities in the world. But not just that, Yaktva Turnamashesha Mandalapati Shrenim Sadatu Chavat. They gave up all aristocracy. They renounced everything. They were practicing renunciation from sense gratification. Not just that, Sankhya Purvakanamagana Natibi Kalavasani Krito. Sankhya means to measure. So what were they doing? Every single day they were measuring. They were doing sadhana. They were measuring how many rounds, how many obeisances, how many parikramas. They were doing sadhana. And what were they doing? Every day in the courtyard of the Radha Damodar temple, they were associating with each other and they were discussing Krishna Katha. So yes, they were crying for Krishna, but they were also developing knowledge of Krishna. They were also doing service for other living entities. They were also renouncing all sense gratification. They were also practicing sadhana, and they were also associating with each other. When you cry for Krishna sincerely, and you also cultivate these 5 things, then your cry will never become a sentimental cry. It will never become the cry of a sahajya, but it will become the cry of a sadhaka. And when you do the cry of a sadhaka, then by Krishna's grace, maybe it will become the cry of a siddha, the cry of the perfected soul, the pure soul. And that is our aspiration. Okay, I've gone 10 minutes over time, so I think I should stop there. Thank you so much for your association, for your kindness, kind opportunity to share something with you, and hope to see you all very soon and serve you in some small way. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Sutapa Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Haribol.
Thank you so much, Sutapa Prabhu, for your wonderful and in-depth explanation of the verses. And also special thanks to schematic view of the canto and breakdown of the chapters with acronym SLAP. That's wonderful. That's so enlightening. So if you don't mind, we'll try to use these every week in our study, Srimad Bhagavatam study. And we hope to learn from you again and again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Guruji, for your invite. Thank you for your patience in scheduling. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
His Grace Sutapa Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for a lovely class.